Friendo Steve here. Welcome back to the channel. So, of course, AEW's Double or Nothing pay-per-view went down this past weekend, and it's always fun to take a look at their big events and see, okay, where are they as a company? What can we take away from one of these big events and see what they're doing really well, what they can improve on, and everything in between. So let's hop right into it. Before I get started, do me a favor, give this video a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button so we can help grow Wrestle Juice over here at the Friendoville channel. Let's hop right into it. My number 5 takeaway is this. They need to learn how to milk their moments a little bit better. Now, what I'm talking about specifically came during the Casino Battle Royal, where you had two legends, Christian and Matt Hardy, come face to face in the middle of the ring during their big Battle Royal spot. This is kind of a big moment because you have two guys with a lot of history that go back a long ways, and you parallel this with what we saw early this year at the Royal Rumble, where WWE had both Edge and Christian in the Royal Rumble. They're going at it and fighting other people, and then they come together, and everybody sort of sees sort of part, and they focus on that moment, and they hug, and they have a moment. And I feel like, given the history of Christian and Matt Hardy, of course, they're part of those epic TLC matches back in the day, like 20 years ago. And you had them in the ring together, and they never really just sort of stopped and let people breathe in that moment, let the crowd take it in and start, chanting whatever they're going to chant. Instead, they sort of stayed on a wide shot, and then they had a moment a little while later when Matt Hardy tried to get Christian to team up with him. So I feel like they still need to learn. I mean, that's one thing that WWE is really good at, especially with the Royal Rumble, is you have all these different participants in there. Let those stories play out. And I know AEW is a little bit different in that a lot of their stars are coming from different places. They're still new. They don't have all that history that WWE has with guys who have been there for a while. But still, I feel like they need to let these things breathe a little bit more and have their TV production really focus on those cool story beats, which people really appreciate. If AEW is going to be bringing in legends like Christian, Matt Hardy, now Mark Henry, Big Show, I feel like they can really focus on taking full advantage of having all that history there in the ring at the same time. My number 4 takeaway is going to be that their women's division really needs a lot more talent. So Hikaru Shida for the past year has been the women's champion, and she's done a great job considering the kind of creative AEW has given her, which really hasn't been a whole lot. But she's been a champion who has basically been a standard bearer of sorts. She's been sort of the steady, reliable champion. You're always going to get a great match out of her. They haven't used her nearly enough in terms of personality, character, promo work, which I know, from what I understand, she has really been more interested in doing. But AEW, they have not traditionally given a lot of time to their women's division, especially on Dynamite, which is primarily the thing I watch, because the other shows are just jobber shows. Anyways, but if you look at the landscape now that Britt Baker has actually won the championship, and if you look at AEW's women's division, there haven't been a lot of women's talent that has been built to the point where, there's a laundry list of people that can be gunning for her, because there really isn't. You look on the face side, you've got Red Velvet, who's still making a name for herself, but I think she's number 5 as of now in the rankings, if I'm not mistaken. So she's solid, but we still don't know a lot about her, just in terms of what we've seen on Dynamite. You've got Jade Cargill, who's going to be a big star, and she's really being groomed to be a huge star, but she's also a bad guy, and that sort of overlaps with Britt Baker, although Britt is sort of versatile enough so she can occupy a face role if Jade Cargill is eventually going to be the one to take that title off her, which is very possible. Obviously, you have Thunder Rosa waiting in the wings. She dropped a promo on this week's Elevation, I think, saying, hey, I'm coming for you now. And then you've got, you still have, I guess, rematch potential with Shida, which they usually don't do in AEW, so I don't really suspect that that's going to be a thing. But otherwise, if you look up and down the rankings, it's like Ty Conti already had a title shot. Maybe she can come back up the rankings. Abaddon's out there. They had a really brief thing with her and Shida. You can do Abaddon as, a certain type of, she's a face, basically, I think. No, she was a heel last time. She could be sort of either one. But that's really only a small handful of names for that women's division, now that title has switched hands to a really strong heel character, if you look at the landscape of the women's division, they really need to start building up. Like, for example, a Chris Statlander, give her a bunch of wins on Dynamite. Let's see her climb up those ranks and give us a story with her, which they never really have done with Chris Statlander. And maybe she can challenge Britt Baker. But I really feel like at this point, they need to focus on building up challengers to that women's title. For the longest time, it's been Britt Baker and it's been Thunder Rosa, who have sort of been the obvious challengers for that title. It ended up being Britt Baker. And then she took that title from Sheeta. So I really do feel like, especially compared to a lot of the other companies out there, to Impact, WWE, they're, under that umbrella, NXT, AEW still has a lot of work to do building up their women's division. I do feel like on Dynamite specifically, they need to devote more time to that over there. Maybe do a talent exchange. If you bring like a Deonna Purrazzo or Jordan Grace over from Impact, or even like a Rachel Ellering over from Impact, you could be helping yourself out quite a bit there. Number 3 takeaway. They have totally nailed Sting. They have got him absolutely perfect. This in-ring debut for him there in AEW at Double or Nothing was one of my favorite matches on the card. The fact that at 62 years old, he's able, even if he gives us 2 cinematic matches and 2 regular matches, just something to do at each pay-per-view, and then maybe he disappears for a little while. I do feel like Darby Allin needs to get out of his shadow a little bit, but I've actually kind of appreciated the relationship they've established. That moment on Dynamite when Darby Allin lost the TNT title to Miro and they shared that little fist bump. The first time you saw some vulnerability, you saw some emotional bonding between the two of them, was a really beautiful moment. And then this in-ring action from Sting, no-selling the suplex up on the stage, doing the big splash, dropping the Scorpion Death Drop on Scorpio Sky. That stuff, the dynamic between him and Darby Allin, has actually felt very organic. It's felt very real. And I think they've done a really, really wonderful job with Sting, bringing him in and utilizing his strengths while completely keeping him away from any potential weaknesses. It's kind of a stark contrast to what they were trying to do in WWE. It's like, hey, let's just put you in the ring with Seth Rollins and see you go 5 years ago. That obviously just wasn't going to work. AEW has their hands on him. He looks amazing, especially for his age, but just in general, he looks great. They've done a really great job with Sting. Hopefully that continues, and maybe it'll entice other legends who might be thinking of hanging him up to come on over to AEW if they use Sting in this way. They use most of the legends pretty damn good. Like to see more of that stuff. Number 2 is Cody. I mean, it's one of my takeaways is what is going on with that. He had a real opportunity, and I don't even think Anthony Ogogo needed to win here necessarily, although that would have gone a long way. But if Cody is going to continue to book his own island of stories, you need more bad guys, especially if Cody's going to leave to be a father for a little while, which I don't know if he's going to. But this was a huge opportunity to make a much bigger deal out of Anthony Ogogo, who clearly has tons of talent. He's got a lot of charisma. I think he still has a little ways to go before he can really hold his own in a match and not be carried to a good match, but that's okay because he's only been training pro wrestling for a little while now. But the fact that Cody kind of just kicked out of, what was it, like a gut punch? Like the gut punch was the thing for Ogogo. That's the dangerous weapon. And Cody just sort of took it and then like an Olympic slam and then he kicked out. That's not doing favors for anybody. At no point has Ogogo, with the exception of the 2 matches that he had during the build to this, where he just sort of annihilated people, like after that, he just didn't really come off as much of a threat at all. Like they did that goofy weigh-in, and I don't know what the philosophy here is. It feels like, and I have no idea if this is the case, it feels like Cody got the feedback from that really cringy promo of his, and then got almost self-conscious about this entire angle and decided, okay, we're gonna undercook this thing and just get it over with, because the match had kind of a let's just get it over with feel to it. And I don't know, I feel like they needed to make this a much bigger deal for what Cody was trying to do with it, and they just didn't. It honestly just felt like sort of a Dynamite match, like does not have a pay-per-view quality match feel to it, and I'm kind of curious what the story is with that. And that was my phone. It's Twitter. Anyways, my number one takeaway. Let's go there. This is sort of a big picture thing for AEW. I feel like they need a little bit more unpredictability. Double or Nothing was a lot of fun. I really, really loved the pay-per-view. I thought it was great. I thought the Cody match aside, which honestly I really appreciate, in that it did let me know what Anthony Ogogo can do in the ring at this point on a big pay-per-view setting. Everything else, I'm pretty sure, with the exception of Christian winning, although in my fantasy book video I did actually call Jungle Boy winning this. They actually went through with that, and I thought that was great. Everything else was pretty predictable here. The championship that changed hands was the women's title. I think pretty much everybody saw that coming. Kenny retaining his title, even in ridiculous fashion. Everybody saw that coming. I feel like AEW has been so good at referencing the past. They might look to the past for some inspiration, specifically the Attitude Era. We all remember WrestleMania 14 when Stone Cold Steve Austin got that title off of Shawn Michaels. The Austin era had begun. Now, that didn't mean he had the title for a year straight. I think he had it for like 3 months, something like that, until Kane got it off him, of all people. And nobody really thought that the Kane era was starting. It was just Stone Cold was the focal point. He was the top babyface, and it was on him to get that title back. They used the title coming off him to give him even more momentum heading into more stories. And I feel like I understand that Kenny's thing is, I'm the belt collector, but what would happen if he lost one of those belts? You can give Orange Cassidy a short reign just to sort of test out where he is with the fans, and to say, hey, fans, anything can happen here in AEW. If you put that title on Orange Cassidy, number one, that crowd there at Daly's Place would have absolutely exploded. They were ready to explode, and because that match was built brilliantly towards the finish with Orange Cassidy. Wasn't a huge fan of Kenny using all the titles to beat up everybody, although I thought the double axe handle the ref was pretty funny. But I thought from the Orange Cassidy side of things, he was brilliant in this match, and the way they built his finish was absolutely spectacular. And then, of course, he got the crucifix pin roll up there. But I do feel like you can take some inspiration. I mean, certainly this is not something that WWE does all that often, in terms of the unpredictable nature of how they go about things. Sudden title changes here and there just don't really happen anymore. And so I do think that that's one way AEW can sort of separate themselves from the WWE if they, consider themselves a real alternative to WWE type booking. It's okay if somebody else wins the title in shocking fashion and then loses it like right afterwards. If Kenny goes on a rampage, he's like, hey, I lost my most precious title. I have all these other ones, but I don't care about those. I want that one. And then he somehow rigs it on the next Dynamite or 2 Dynamites later to get that title back. Then, number one, you're popping ratings. You're letting people know anything can happen here in AEW. And I feel like this pay-per-view sort of illustrated that we have a plan. It's kind of transparent, and we're going to stick to it. I'd like to see a little bit more transparent or a little bit more unpredictability. But beyond that, I think AEW is a wonderful company. They seem like everybody seems like they like working there. Everybody seems like they're having a lot of fun there. Their pay-per-views are a ton of fun. This is a 4-hour pay-per-view, and I feel like it deserved to be 4 hours. I thought it was a good, solid 4-hour pay-per-view. So, not a lot of people can pull off that these days. WWE is scaled back to like 3.5 hours. So yeah. Anyways, that's what I think my biggest takeaways were from AEW's Double or Nothing. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Remember, if you haven't already, give this video a thumbs up. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I appreciate it. Check out one of these other videos here. I got a couple other videos that you might be interested in. You can check out my fantasy book video where I was like, hey, these things should happen at Double or Nothing. And, of course, like none of them except for the Jungle Boy thing happened. So there you go.